hey, something goes in the wallet.
Yeah.
And what that does is pay for your ice cream. And if there's not enough in there, there's no ice cream. And you should have seen that day. And he says, I need ice cream money. And he panics. And we say, well, let's go earn some.
Yeah.
He goes, what do I need to do to get ice cream money? And as dumb as it, and simple as it may sound, I think it's fundamental to, it doesn't grow on trees.
No.
Hey guys, welcome to our Clover Hill Church Family Ministry Podcast. My name is Alyssa.
Hey, I'm Charles.
I'm Shay Smith.
Yeah, and Shay, we're in March now, and so what are we talking about today?
All right, here's the title, March Money Madness.
Money Madness.
Yeah, Money Madness. We are talking
go.
about maybe a considerably taboo subject. We're talking about finances and personal finance.
Okay.
And I'm so excited to welcome.
Why are you excited?
Well, I think he's really hot, our guest.
Okay.
I know.
Who is it? I can't wait to meet him.
All right, my husband, Michael Smith.
What's up, Mike?
Hey guys, how y'all doing?
Good. Glad to have you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I know. So we are talking about money, and thankfully he's the financial guru between the two of us.
Okay.
Nice.
And
Somebody had to be.
Somebody's got to, because I don't even know the login to the bank account. So.
That's okay.
That's a problem. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. And so we're just excited to have you here. Thank you for saying yes.
Yeah.
And want to hear about who you are.
Yeah.
Why you're so excited to be here and married to me. Oh, that's not gonna.
Well, who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I got to admit, I'm pretty humbled because I'm really not an expert in any way.
Yeah.
I think I'm passionate about it, but my passion for personal finance kind of developed the last probably 10 years, really. A little about me. I'm the middle of 5 kids. I grew up here in Chesterfield County, born and raised. My dad was a shift worker at DuPont. My mom was a homemaker. She went back to work after my youngest sibling went into school. And I would say my background is one of very limited means. We didn't starve or anything, but it was definitely hand-me-downs playing outside. It was a great childhood. I think that's probably the long and short of my background. I did come up through public school. Shay and I actually met in public school.
Okay.
Go Skyhawks. And then I went to UVA, did civil engineering.
Sweet.
And kind of followed what I felt was the calling for my life, which was building. I grew up, playing Lincoln Logs and building forts outside, and I always knew I wanted to build, skyscrapers and data centers and all this kind of stuff. So after school, I went to building construction management, really out of D.C., and did that for 10 years, in and out of D.C., but D.C. was always my home base.
Yeah. And
in 2018, Shay and I decided I was going to pivot my career and help start a Richmond office of another company, and it's been great. So here we are.
That's awesome.
I'd like to make a note. He said that he got into finances, really started studying it about 10 years ago, which is about when we got back together, which was a subtle way of saying I'm expensive. And I think he had to come to terms with.
I'm not saying you're not expensive.
Okay.
So
there you go.
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting though. So your career isn't necessarily finance focused.
Not at all.
Yes.
I have nothing to sell you. I'm not here to sell insurance.
Right. But so with that being said, why of course, everyone should care about their money. But it sounds like you're someone that's really invested a lot of time and energy into that. So I guess why, if that's not your career field,
Yeah, totally. I think right around 10 years ago, I just had a little bit of a light bulb moment with, I realized I'm trading my time for money. As a W-2 worker, I'm going in, you're almost punching the clock, leaving, and you're going, what do I have to show for it? You need to create some margin. You need to look at your life every year and say, how am I advancing towards a goal? Yeah. And I don't think I really had one. I think it was more of I was passionate about my career. I wanted to do well, to build well, and I was proud of that. Yeah. I had these values that my parents had instilled in me, which I'm proud about. I was always a saver, so I was never worried about money, but I never had an abundance of it, so I just kind of did what I think a lot of people do, which is go through the motions and not really step back and think, what is this for? And,
Yeah.
and what am I trying to get to, and really get a game plan.
Wow.
So I would say right around there, about 10 years ago, I really started getting into, the different literature. Now, if you go out there, I'm sure you've heard of, the guys like Dave Ramsey and like J.L. Collins and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all these different things that a lot of people look into. And I started absorbing a lot of it. Like a lot of things, I don't take it all in. I take what's good for me and what I think has wisdom to it and is applicable to my life. And I started getting a game plan for us.
That's great.
So, yeah.
I really want to hit on two things throughout today. One is, how do we teach our kids finances and taking ownership of being successful adults in their finances? Because we all go through school and we don't really talk about how to do taxes, but we do know how to square dance and do-si-do.
We know cursive. Yeah.
And write
True.
cursive. So I want to talk about kids, and I also want to talk about personal debt, because that's a huge one, especially
great.
in our conversations at church too. So let's break it down. How would you say, and what should we teach our kids when it comes to being financially responsible?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's good. I just to jump onto that, it is weird to go K through 12, go through, undergrad. And I was a very math heavy focus. I also did a minor in business and came out knowing nothing about personal finance. I mean, a little bit, an amortization table maybe on a loan, but nothing on, how to pay taxes, how to pay your mortgage, how to do any of those things.
And that's such a big part of life.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Right?
that's
It's
just
amazing.
that's crazy. Even with a business minor, it's like,
Yeah, you're like, what? Yeah,
Yeah,
you do
you go
micro
through
and
all school.
macroeconomics, but you never actually learned, like how much should I spend on a car?
Yeah.
No one ever told you.
Yeah.
Or rent, or
Rent, or
all of it.
your mortgage, on different things. Like, hey, am I out of bounds or not?
or how do you really pay your taxes?
Yeah. So did John, right? So, and pay him, please.
Yep, please pay 'em.
So just jumping in on the kids one. This is a stage I think we're both in.
Yep.
With little kids, and I really take a lot of lessons off my parents, which is, first I really am a believer in. I think what Dave Ramsey's daughter says is like more is taught than caught.
Yeah.
Or more is caught than taught. Let me
Right.
reverse that. And so I try not to focus too much on like sitting down and having a hard lesson so much as what are they kind of learning off me just by being around me.
Sure.
And I think a big one for that is hard work.
Okay.
It's funny, I brought my son into my job one day and he's like, Daddy, when are we going to go outside and do construction? And I'm sitting there at a computer going, yeah, I'm doing construction. I'm at my computer, So, he's like, when's Daddy going to do work? So I do think that there's joy and love in like the labor. And so when I'm home, it shouldn't all be, sedentary, like sitting there watching TV or even like, hey, just reading and stuff. Sometimes I want him to see hard work. Like, hey, we're going to go shovel the snow. We're going to go blow the leaves. And he's right there beside me. And when we're done doing hard work, we admire a little bit the hard work, which sounds kind of funny. Like, look what we just did.
No, but
it's
that's an important part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we did a good job. Let's sit here and have a water and look at what we just did.
No, or if not, it's just hard work for hard work's sake, and that's not sustainable
Right.
for anybody.
Right. I think it's important to acknowledge the hard work, especially as you're married, and acknowledging one another's hard work and efforts. I think that's super important to do that in front of your kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll highlight too, I mean, you guys may have some experience on this, but a lot of folks that I talk to, they're, especially post-pandemic, it's where can I like do a work from home job where I can go travel and, I'll go, arbitrage and stay in an Airbnb on an island and just, barely have to work. And I would tell you, I found a lot of joy in the work, like, hey, I enjoyed going to work, having a job through the pandemic and going in, and there's a lot of fulfillment there. You talk to some people who retire and they lose some of their purpose, know, and so anyway, I've definitely found that to be true.
Yeah, and there's a lot of biblical precedent that supports what you're just saying, that you could even go as far as to say we were created to work. We weren't made to be idle. We weren't made to just kind of sit and not do anything.
Right.
I think part of our divine design is working and working hard. Again, created to tend the garden, to steward over all creation. I mean, it's a job that we're made for. And in that, just like what you're saying, there's some purpose that's found in work. So, I mean, that's good.
And I would tell you too,
hard
the consistency of work.
Yeah.
That's the other thing I wanted to show, our children, which is, when I was growing up, my dad was a shift worker. And even though, he was coming home and going right to sleep when we wanted to play sometimes, you grow to respect, the consistency of going in, showing up, doing it, getting your family to church, going to work. He taught, Boy Scouts through our church, Royal Rangers. That wasn't easy as a shift worker. I always respected that about my dad. And I wanted them to see that consistency. And I think that goes through other things, not just work, that's with your relationships, being consistent, even when somebody's mean to you, being an intentional friend, even through hard times. I think with health and fitness, that's hard, like, hey, it's anything quick. You hear about the fads now about the weight loss shots and stuff. It's like, look, I don't know all the science behind it, but I can tell you this. I've always been proud of being consistent with health and fitness.
Absolutely.
That's been a journey too. And that's what I wanted to teach our kids on that one.
What about for slightly older kids who understand a little bit more about, okay, things cost money? What would you say, like, maybe 5 to 15-year-olds? What do we teach them?
Well, I think at some point we've transitioned, and I could see it now with our 2 older ones, of they hear like an ice cream truck and, like ice cream. And you're like, well, ice cream costs money. I think our the last Christmas gift from my parents was like a wallet to our kids. And I actually really liked it because, it was like, hey, something goes in the wallet. Yeah. And what that does is pay for your ice cream. And if there's not enough in there, there's no ice cream. And you should have seen that day. And he says, I need ice cream money. And he panics. And we say, well, let's go earn some. He goes, what do I need to do to get ice cream money? And as dumb as it, and simple as it may sound, I think it's fundamental to, like, it doesn't grow on trees.
No, I mean, you're teaching them. That's big. Wow.
And I think that'll extrapolate into other things later. I mean, I remember, like, when it was time to get a car, like, I want a car. You want the cool car. Well, the cool car costs a little more money. Let's determine how much, I think it's important to have skin in the game, participation. I've seen where sometimes that can go the wrong way, where we want to provide everything for our kids, right? I mean, there's nothing I wouldn't do. But sometimes the hardest thing to do is to show some reservation and not just, gift them everything.
Or even delayed gratification. Like, I mean, Creighton wants a toy every week. I'm like, why? It's not your birthday. It's not Christmas. Like, you're going to have to wait for that. Or wait until you earn more money.
Or if you have too many toys, maybe you have to give one away.
Right.
And that's hard too. And I would say that's a little bit of contentment, which, we should probably circle on, which is, I think giving is one of the truest ways to test your heart on contentment. It's one of the truest ways to tell yourself, I have enough. And that was one that we had to learn, in our adulthood was, hey, it should be the first fruits because we are truly saying to ourselves that we have enough. And I want our children to experience that. Of we don't need more. Everything you hear on social media is you need more, right? And some of it is, it's not fair because you're seeing the highlight reels of everyone like, man, doesn't everybody just go to Turks and Caicos all the time? Like, why aren't we there? Why are we at King's Dominion? We should be at Turks and Caicos. And it's like, hey, there's always going to be more. It's okay to be content with what you have.
Man, that's just such a hard thing to instill. Because again, I think part of this conversation, we just have to understand that regardless of how excellent we are in parenting, our kids will be entitled because we're in America in 2024, right? Like, that's just, it's just a given. It doesn't matter how great of a bubble you develop, they will be entitled to some degree, right?
Sure.
And it's crazy how, like, even with our girls, again, 2 and 4, how since I can remember with both of them, like, again, they want a snack or something, and if it's not big enough or if it's not all of something, like, oh my gosh, God forbid I break something in half, it's game over.
Dare you?
I want all of it. You know what I mean? Or she got more. She
got the bigger half.
It's crazy. And they will literally justify to themselves having a 30-minute meltdown because it didn't fill the whole plate or something, you know?
Sure.
And so it's just, there's a lot of things we're fighting against.
Right. It starts early.
The struggle's real. I don't think you can keep them in a bubble forever.
No way.
Eventually they're going to see their neighbor has that. Why don't we? It's almost like Keeping Up with the Joneses has been expanded especially with social media.
Oh, yeah.
Where really keeping up with the Joneses was something where you were supposed to hit that once you're in, middle class suburbia and you're seeing the person with the minivan and the white picket fence. Now it's kids, it's 16-year-olds seeing, social media highlights of other people.
Yep.
And you don't know what's fact or fiction. So you don't know, like,
part.
hey, did they, is that a private jet that he just snuck on the tarmac and jumped over and took a picture with? Or is he actually on a private jet chartered vacation?
Right.
You have no idea.
No idea.
So you have to take it all with a grain of salt. And I think that's why it's important to instill these values early as you can into the kids.
So the values you're given so far, you said hard work. Consistency. And then was contentment one of them? Or that was...
I would say gratitude and contentment was something I was just kind of lumping together.
Yeah, that's great.
But, how do we show gratitude? Well, you'll be content once you have more. Can't be it can't be the mantra.
No.
Right.
And we worked hard to make sure that, our kids are saying thank you. One thing that's tough, and I'm going to speak to maybe if we have a grandparent listening, which is, grandparents want to shower the kids with gifts. And, I would want to do the same thing. But, man, I've seen, in my own life, like, okay, here's this present. All right, next up, and just rip into the next present. Next up, rip into the next one. Say, hang on a minute. Did they even say thank you for the first one?
Yeah.
And, and I'm not saying, like, gift giving is bad. I think it's great.
Yeah.
But it's important to do a little bit of reality check and say, hang on a minute. This is a gift that was gifted to you. You need to be grateful for it.
Yeah.
Go say thank you to Nana. Give her a hug. And why don't let's absorb it for a minute,
Yeah, and even circling back of like this gift cost them money.
Yeah.
And to attach things do have money. You were talking about like ice cream. Just yesterday, Greer and I are leaving for dance, and I had said, Daddy works so hard. You came in a little late, and I was like, he was working really hard, and we're so grateful. And she goes, because Daddy works for ice cream money? And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
But like she made that connection.
Yeah.
Like she had already had it. And so like even just like acknowledging like, hey, that gift that grandma gave you costs money. And now even Creighton and Greer are starting to say, how much money?
Yeah.
Oh, well, $20. Like, whoa, that's a lot. And because it is.
Yeah.
So starting to attach actual numbers with the item, I think is important too.
I think so.
Like, it helps them start to formulate, wow, certain things have bigger values and smaller values. So I think it's important to start attaching that.
Right. And then I'll just move into another one. We talked about a little bit of participation, as the kids advance in age, where they start to want things that have a bigger dollar value associated. I think one thing my parents did well was, they looked at my own financial means and said, hey, we're probably going to have to supplement some, like on insurance for the car, a little bit of the car purchase. I think the first one I paid for, the second one, we split, but skin in the game was very, very important. The other one, though, was budgeting. And this is something that I think you have to just teach a little early. It's a dirty word, budgeting. I don't want people like it. I think for me, budgeting has been something that if you just get it right early, like you don't have to constantly come back to it. I was taught to live with margin in my life early. And because of that, I didn't have to watch it all the time. I was already generally frugal. And so there was going to be margin there. So for me, that was my upbringing. Was saving was kind of the easy part. Investing, which we'll get into later, that was the hard part. Because I had no idea what to put money into later. But budgeting for us, what it looked like was when I reached working age, which I think was about 14, to get my first paychecks and stuff, and a little before that, when I started cutting grass and stuff around the neighborhood, we had a bank at the end of our neighborhood that I could ride my bike to, and my parents opened a custodial checking account. And I would ride my bike up there and deposit my check, $20. There you go, from cutting grass. Or when I started working at, U Crops as a bagger boy, and I would take my check over there and deposit. I had no idea that there was even a thing called a credit card. My parents never even told me.
Wow.
It was just like, hey, instead of keeping it in the coffee can, you're going to keep it in the bank. And when you need it, you take some out.
Yeah.
Because of that, it wasn't even introduced to me as a principle that there was anything beyond what I had earned.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like, money in and money out. There's no extra money that you can just go get, And I think that's really important.
Speaking of working age, you told me a story before. You have to tell it about when you started cutting grass, how your dad took.
Oh yeah. So
Tell 'em
y'all
about the money
appreciate
part.
this. So my dad, he's got a lot of funny stuff that he did with us growing up. But one was, we all wanted to. I'm in the middle of 5. We all wanted to cut grass around the neighborhood, and we had some regular clients and stuff. So we would go down the street. We would push lawnmower down the street, cut the grass. We'd come back. We'd have a check for $20, and he'd say, "Hang on a minute. $2 goes to church, goes to the Lord, and another $2 goes to me for wear and tear on the lawnmower."
Oh my God.
And by the way, you put gas into that lawnmower, you better ride your bike up to the gas station and fill it up. So I'm like, man, by the time I was done, I had like $14 left.
Right.
But that's kind of real life.
That is real life.
That'll prepare you for
that really
when you think your paycheck should be something, and then the government takes their share.
Right.
But and
But in this case, it was your dad taking your.
Yeah.
it was
Which I
important to
love.
know. Another thing he did was, my mom would cook a meal, and he would say, "Hey, this meal, if you were to go out to a restaurant, would cost," and he would always almost exaggerate it. It costs, let's say $100, but he goes, in order to spend $100, you got to make $130. And we're all like, huh? Slowly over time, he's being funny at first, but over time it starts hitting with you with like, hey, my money, it's not all like directly into my bank account.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be things that come out and that I have to allocate to. And that's the beginning also of budgeting in your mind of like, hey, I need to understand I got to earn 20 if I need to go spend 14 on this,
Right.
and those wheels started turning. And then I would say right around end of middle school to high school, as I started that checking account, then it really started clicking with like, man, I want to build up this nest egg so that way I have money to go spend on, gas in my car, if I want to go on a date, if I want to go do this or that, like, hey, I have money.
Yeah.
So I want to transition because I there are a lot of parents listening. Like these are really good points to teach our kids, but maybe some are feeling like, oh my gosh, but I have so much debt. How do I teach my kids something that I am really struggling with myself? So can you speak to advice on getting out of debt, some resources that you would say like, hey, listen to them, go to them, give us some thoughts.
Yeah, well, I like there's this one saying which is like, put your own oxygen mask on before you like deal with the other person beside you. And I go, like consumer debt particularly, like it'll just live all over you. It'll almost be on your facial expressions. It weighs a certain amount on your heart, and getting out of consumer debt is absolutely critical. But before that, if we back up, what I've seen and read and talked to people is communication with your spouse is number one. I don't want to succeed or fail without Shay. So it's important that we get there together. And two working as one is so much more powerful than one person going off and learning about personal finance and going, this is what we're doing. You're coming along. That's not going to be a plan for success at all.
Yeah,
Long term, at least.
And I'm not saying you both have to have the same passion for it, but it's very, very important that you're both on the same page.
Absolutely.
And I would just say, hey, from there, you just jump right into, you got to get rid of consumer debt. I think a lot of people have heard of the Dave Ramsey plan. That's called the snowball method. You just line up your debt smallest to largest.
Yeah.
I think psychologically, a lot of people, that clicks with them because they want to see some early wins.
Yeah.
That's a great strategy. Another one's called the avalanche method, which is line up your interest rates highest to smallest. Mathematically, you're going to argue that's going to be mathematically the better solution. But honestly, I think it's the rule needs to be, you need to know yourself. What is it that you need to see to stay consistent? Because like we talked about, consistency is the key here. Any plan can be looked at as genius. You just got to follow it. If you follow it, good things are going to come. So I would say you need to choose one of those plans. I think either one of those, there's plenty of resources online that you can get to. The Ramsey plan's a great one, but you got to get mad and you got to go punch your debt in the mouth. Right? That's what he'll teach you. And I couldn't agree more.
And how I just want to ask for how much transparency do you think parents should have? Right. Let's say they do have some debt. Maybe they've made some, whether because of decisions or situations that came their way. How much transparency would you think parents should have with their kids about that? You know, is that something that they should try to protect, not let their kids into? Should they let them into? Of course, you don't want to put fear and worry in them. So where do you maybe say those lines are at? Because that's part of, that's part of developing them, right? This stuff is real. And so how would you kind of address that?
I think it's a great question. I think from what I've seen, first, there's no one size fits all, right? Like this is going to be subjective to your situation. But I think a lot of families appreciate going through the grind together.
Yeah.
Like they realize like we're not going to go out to eat today because we have this other goal in mind. Mm-hmm. And so when you share your goal, like guys, this is a goal that we have as a family and it's going to take all of us. I think it's easier for the family to get behind it and to be proud when you reach it. Yeah. I think, you got to be guarded. Like, you don't want your kid to think that you're destitute and like, they may not have a home, tonight to go to. Yeah. So you just have to weigh that. I would say like, hey, if you're grinding to pay off the debt and you have like a fun diagram at home, make it gamify it with the kids.
That's good.
Like, hey, you're filling it in as you're doing it. And this is a game that we're doing together. And then, there's a lot of different like life hacks of doing things that, hey, instead of a vacation to, wherever that you're seeing on Instagram, hey, we're going to go camp out together at a state park. And, and I got to admit, my family, we did that.
Yeah.
And that wasn't even because we were, grinding in consumer debt. It was just because we had limited means.
Yeah.
And guess what? Those are also some of the best memories of my life.
Sure, yeah.
Even the trip out there, the hubcaps flying off the van and, staying at some sketchy KOA campground and everything. It's all part of the journey and it's fun. I think a lot of times we want our kids to skip some of the struggle and some of that made us, really who we are. And I don't think your kids have to go through the exact same struggle. That's not what the American dream is all about. It's about, elevating slowly. But I do think, like kids are more resilient than you think.
Yeah.
And,
absolutely.
And like, it's okay to scrape your knee. It's okay, to go camp out when it's a little hotter outside than you want it to be or colder.
Yeah.
And a little bit of that makes you better. Yeah.
That's real good.
Yeah.
That's real good.
But, so that was on debt. And I wanted to say one thing. Very easy to say, just go get out of debt. I think, a lot of young folks go, well, my income's not as high as like, that person in their 40s or 50s telling me, just screaming at me, go get out of debt. But I would tell you, you got to create margin and you need money, right, to do that. You need to work, you need a job. But in today's day, there's two ways I see of like immediately trying to create some margin. One is just go budget. Mm-hmm. So if you've gotten out of control, and I don't want to take for granted, like, hey, I had great parents teaching me as a kid, even when I wasn't paying attention, but instilling this into me. But not everybody had that luxury. Mm-hmm. So go get on a budget and create some margin in your life. And if you're saying, hey, I did a budget, and guess what? There ain't no more money at the end of the month. I think right now in today's society, we live in such a good time to go get a side hustle.
Yeah, that's true.
And I know some people just right around here that go and, go clean some gutters out, go cut some grass, go part of the gig economy, go drive Uber Eats. There is no reason that if you don't want to, if you want to go make some side income, you can do that.
Yeah.
I think we know some people in our own life, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a very easy way. Like, hey, go create some money and go get out of consumer debt and do it. Like, I would very much encourage, like the Ramsey plan says, like your hair is on fire, gazelle intensity, and get that knocked out of your life.
There was a time when we were chasing after an investment property that we wanted to buy and renovate. And our money, was never tighter. It was like the tightest it had ever been. And I remember us going to Costco and he's like, nope, we don't need that much butter. And like, even just
gosh, I was taking stuff out of the cart.
We were taking things out of the cart, and I had picked up some babysitting, some extra kids in the neighborhood, random. Like on a Friday night, we have like 3 other kids with our kids. But you know what? It was like an extra $100. And, it wasn't like our favorite time, but it was like a really meaningful time.
Absolutely.
It was a special time. You'll look back and smile at the times that you sprinted. Like when you're going through, was it Days of Thunder? Just drive through it, But man, you'll look back and be so happy at the journey that you took together. That's why I think communication and arriving there together is key. It's everything. Yeah. Because man, that's some of the fondest memories we have right now is like, man, we really went through the struggle together.
Yeah.
And, going through it's not always the most comfortable.
For sure.
You know, we were like, hey, the kids' stuff first, then it's our stuff in the cart. And that's, you know, so we've had those years. And and it's fun now looking back. You're like, man, this is great.
I think what's cool that sticks out about what you're saying is that even you were very blessed to come from, you saw a lot of these things. You had a foundation built for you around money that really set you up for success as you got older. But the cool thing is, even if you didn't have that foundation when you were younger, you can start now and doing that for yourself. And then if you already have kids, for your kids, like you can then set that foundation for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So really it's a win either way, because even if it was there, that's great. You can move forward. And if not, even with your own life, with your own parenting, you can instill that into the future, which is so cool. Like it's a win either way.
It is.
It's just having to pick something like you're saying and sticking with it.
Right, exactly. I mean, the consistency is everything, and you can start from wherever you are. You know, if you're listening to this and you're drowning in debt, or if you're listening to this and you're comfortable in your means, you still have, you know, a place to go. You still have goals, and I think like applying some of this is worthwhile.
Yeah, and that's what I want to ask as we close. Kind of everyone listening, and I guess parents specifically, just for this, if you were just to tell them once they're done listening, this is an action step you should take regarding all this, what would you say?
I would say number one, you need a goal. Where there's no vision, like the people perish kind of thing. Like, where are we heading? You know, Shay and I, we literally once a year, I mean, we do it a little more, but I would encourage it at least once a year. Mm-hmm. We sit down, we do a net worth statement. So we say, what do we have to show for, you know, for going out and working? You know, where are we today? What are our goals? Where do we want to be? You know, we put all this thought into so many other things in our life. Man, people plan their vacations and they talk about it more than they talk about their own personal financial goals. Mm. And sometimes we put it off until later in life. And the most valuable, you know, change you can make financially, you know, some of the most valuable dollars you can invest are the ones early on. Yeah. I wish I knew some of this stuff, you know, as I was heading into college or right into the workforce. Right. You know, time is what you need on investing, which I know we're going to get into investing, I think, on next week's episode. But, you know, if you can just, you know, keep fighting and grinding your way up this mountaintop, like there is going to be a crest where you look over and you go, man, my hard work, it finally paid off. I'm there. But how many times we see people living paycheck to paycheck, they're just stuck in this hamster wheel of, you know, never ending bills and, you know, more month than money at the end. You know, it's sad to see it because that's not the way we were supposed to live.
I love it. Get on a consistent communication plan with your spouse, have a common goal, find accountability, and teach our kids just the basics of
the values.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. This was awesome. Looking forward to next episode.
Absolutely.
Where we talk about your money making money for you.
There's a beautiful tomorrow to this. Yeah. And we'll get there.
Cool.
So yeah.
Thank
Excited
you.
to do it.
That's awesome.
Thanks, guys.